Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another live stream with Barry Darnall Art. I'm Barry Darnall, and I welcome you to my stream. If you're joining me again, thank you for coming back. If you're a subscriber and coming back to watch the stream, thank you for being a member. If you're not subscribed, if you would hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Every little bit helps. Every subscription helps to get the channel out there and help me to build this thing. And if this is your first time at one of my live streams, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what we do here. So tonight we're going to get back into the next part of my vintage Lincoln drawing. During the week I worked more on the drawing. I got a lot more of it mapped out. And so tonight we're going to actually start putting in some of the ink. So let me bring up the reference and the drawing here. There we go. All right, so this is what I've done over the course of the week. I've finished drawing out the vehicle and stuff here. And tonight I'm going to start off, I'm going to actually do something with this area back in here, which is the broken window, okay? And I'm going to get some of that filled in a little bit with some ink, and then I'll go in with the ink pens and I'll start working on some of the other detail, getting some of the line work in. I did get a little gift for myself this week. I purchased another set of the Mitsubishi Uni Pen Markers. The ones I had, some of them were starting to run out of ink. So I purchased another set of these. These are really nice because they have a light gray, a medium gray, and a dark gray. It's not actually a black, it's a dark gray. And they come in two different sizes, a 0.1 tip and a 0.5 tip. And I'll be using these on this drawing, along with using some Copic multi-liners. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'm just going to use a simple small round brush tonight, and I'm going to be using the Speedball Super Black India ink. This Super Black India ink, it's been around for years. It's a great ink. They make acrylic inks as well, and I use some of those when I do some of my work. And now a lot of times you're really using these inks when you are using like dip pens and doing, you know, a lot of people use this when they're doing lettering and whatnot, but I use it for doing my drawings. So I'm going to get in here with this brush and pick up a little bit of ink, and I want to kind of get the tip of this brush to a little bit of a point. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm using a smaller brush than I did on the parrot drawing because I'm dealing with some more detailed areas, and I'm just going to come in here and we'll start getting this laid in here. I just kind of want to work my way around the edges here. And the reason I'm doing this is it's just a much quicker way of getting ink down on the paper. This whole area back here is in absolute shadow. So coming in here with the brush and doing this is just a real quick way to lay in a lot of this shadow really quickly versus coming in and trying to do that with the pens or even with a brush pen. Now this ink is getting absorbed pretty quickly with this paper. I need a little bit more ink on there. I'm starting to get dry. I'm not getting very much on there. I'm really trying to just be very sparing with how much I'm getting on the brush because I don't want it to get out of control here. There we go. Now there are a few areas here I'm going to steer a little bit clear of some of these areas. Like these are windshield wipers here, and those are a really fine detail area, and I don't want to go in there with the brush. I can always come back in with a pen that has some white ink in it, and I can do that either with, they've got some white ballpoint pens that do a really good job, or I have some regular ink that is in a jar that I could come in with a dip pen, and I could restate those lines with white ink. And on some of this, I may end up doing that anyways, just to kind of create some highlights. But if I can avoid having to come back in and fix something, that's what I'll prefer to do. But the reality is you almost always have to come back in and work on fixing something. All right. So I've got my outline of that area pretty well laid in. So now I can come in, I can start just blocking in some of this shadow area here with some larger strokes of ink and get this filled in. Now, for those of you who joined me on my last drawing, which was the parrot that I did, that drawing had a very, very large background area that was just all black. And I originally thought I would be able to use one of my brush pens to block that in, but of course, Murphy's Law, I ran out of ink. That brush pen started to run out, and I did not have another one available to me at the moment. So I broke out the brush and the ink and used that to do my block in. And like I was starting to say earlier, you can see where this paper is really soaking up this ink. So I'll end up having to come in again and put a second and possibly even a third layer on this. And that's just because of the paper. It really isn't the ink. The ink is doing what it's supposed to do. This paper is just very absorbent. And so it's soaking that ink in really quickly. And unfortunately, it soaks it in unevenly. So you end up with kind of a patchy coverage. Now, I don't know if that is really showing up so much on the camera, but most definitely, as I'm looking at it, you can see it up in this area right here. You can definitely see where the streaking has started to happen. And that's something that I'll come back in, and maybe I won't. I mean, I may come back in and put some ink down on some of it, but I may end up leaving some of it just because it may end up working for me. Generally with shadows, if you're looking at shadows, most shadows are not pure black. They're gradations of different colors. They tend to have a cast. They tend to be more on the cooler side in most cases, but they generally have some different values and stuff in there. But for the moment, I'm going to run with that. I'm pretty happy with that. So we will leave that there for the moment. Okay, and I need to pull up my reference photo for myself here so I can see this a little bit better. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to get this area in here blocked in with a little bit of ink. Now, I'm not going to try and go all the way back here because it goes to a very, very narrow point back there. But I do want to go ahead and try and get this pretty well started. And if you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're using a brush that's appropriate for the area that you're working with. I would not want to come in here and try and do any of this with the larger round brush that I used on the parrot, because it's just, I would almost guaranteed be going over my lines and getting into areas that I don't want to get into with ink, or at least not with a pure black. There we go. Now, establishing these blacks is kind of important, because I get these established, and this kind of helps to inform me about what the other values need to be as I'm working on this drawing. Okay, I'm going to start putting in my pen marks here shortly, and there are areas in here that I need something to gauge them against, to say, okay, how dark do I go, for example, in this part of the hood? And I can use what I'm putting in here in this small gap as kind of a reference to say, okay, that value is about right compared to the shadows that I've got in here. Okay, now in the grill in here, I still have to get some drawing work done in here to put in this grill. So I'm going to avoid, I'm not going to go in and ink any of that right at the moment. Okay, but there are a couple of other areas in here. There's an area over here on the bumper, for example, that has a really, really hard shadow on the top edge of that. And I'm going to go ahead and put this hard shadow line in here. But I'm going to be careful because I don't want to take this all the way down, because as I'm looking at the reference material, it actually gradates down here to a lighter, really dark shadow. But I want to be able to come up into this shadow, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on coming up into this shadow from down here. So I'm just going to leave that just like that, and then I'll come in here with the pen and I will slowly build that up over time. I'm going to do the same thing down under here. There is a shadow down under here that I can do this with. And like I've said several times, and if you've watched my videos at all, you've heard me say it repeatedly, you will make mistakes. Mistakes are not necessarily bad. It's a learning opportunity, and part of what you're learning is how to hopefully prevent some of those mistakes over time. Hopefully you get good at preventing mistakes, but you also get to learn how to overcome those mistakes. Over the years, I've had a lot of drawings that I have started and then didn't finish because I made a mistake on them. And at the time, I didn't have the skill or the knowledge to kind of work through fixing what I had broken. And, you know, now hopefully I've got a little bit of that knowledge and those skills, and I can work through those things. Okay, I think that's probably all I'm going to do with the brush right now. There are some other areas I probably could go into, but I think before I do that, I want to get some more line work done with the pencil, just to give myself a roadmap to work with. So now I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to clean my brush out in some water. An important thing, if you are working with brushes and you're using ink, okay, ink is no different than paints. If you allow it to dry in the brush, it will destroy your brushes over time. Some of your inks, your India inks, generally are a little bit more forgiving. They're a little bit easier on the bristles. But definitely if you're working with acrylic inks, you want to make sure you get them cleaned out, okay? Because the acrylics will dry on them just like acrylic paint will dry on a brush. And once it's in there, there's pretty much no getting that out of the brush, and it's pretty much ruined. So I've got it pretty much rinsed out, and I'm just going to leave it in the container of water to soak while I'm working on this the rest of the time. Okay. Give me just a second here. Let me pull something up for myself. All right, there we go. Okay, so we're going to grab one of my Copic multi-liners. I'm going to grab the 0.05, which is a very, very small multi-liner. And I'm going to start working on the window area in here, okay? That's kind of a feature area of this vehicle. So I want to start getting some of my detail and stuff in there, especially since I've already got that laid in. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come in here. I'm going to start working to draw against my lines I've already put on here. And even as I have finished a lot of this drawing, I'm still referring to my reference photo pretty continuously for guidance. And we will bring this down over here. And what you'll find is that if most artists, if you're doing, especially if you're doing like figure drawings and things like that, you'll find that you're probably looking more at your subject than you are at your drawing. And that's because you're constantly wanting to check yourself against what you're doing. So now I want to come in here, and there's a piece of chrome that's in between the window and the actual body, and I'm going to work to draw that in here. Now I don't have that line drawn, but I'm going to just try and keep my pen parallel with what I've already drawn. And like I said, I want to try and do this without making too many mistakes, but you will make some. But I try to just kind of relax about this, because even if I make a mistake here, I can always come back in and I can fix it. I can cover it up, I can repair it. And like just right there, I just made a little bit of a mistake. For some reason, I'm having a little bit of difficulty bringing my line down on this side, and I kind of shot out a little bit. There we go. Okay. And now I think I'm going to start working on this part of the glass over in here. And we'll start getting some of this laid in. Now this is kind of cool. I've not drawn a lot of glass, especially not broken glass. So I'm kind of excited to be doing this and see what this is about. I'm sorry if I'm getting in front of the camera here. I am looking to see if I've got my glasses. It's kind of a smaller area, so sometimes I like to have on some glasses to work in these areas. So, okay, well, the one thing I don't have with me, but that's okay. We'll still come in here and we'll start doing some work. Now, so these areas in here, there is a small area where the edge of the glass is reflecting light. So that separates it from those shadows inside the car. Okay. And so I've got to try and maintain that separation between the edges of the glass and those shadows inside there. And I'm pretty sure that I will probably have to come back in here and put some white ink in here, because I'm pretty comfortable that some of these lines are going to fall apart as I'm doing this, but that's okay. This is really interesting for me to do this. Like I said, I've not drawn a lot of glass, especially broken glass like this. So it's a little bit of a challenge, new experience. And I'm also trying to pay attention to what the glass is doing in the reference material here. There are some different reflections happening in it. I'm trying to capture some of those. All right. And I apologize if I get a little bit lost in my train of thought here while I'm doing this. I'm just trying to work on these small detail areas, and that I sometimes get caught up in that and I get quiet. Some people would say that's not a bad thing for me to get quiet, but those people shall remain nameless. I won't point anybody out, but they know who they are. Now this over here, there's some really small lines over here, and I don't think I'm going to be able to protect those from my pen. So I'm going to go ahead and just work this area with the intention of coming back in here later on and actually hitting those again with the white ink. There we go. So that is the first part of that. This is kind of enjoyable. This is a little bit more challenging than what I thought it was going to be, perhaps. And of course, I'm trying to be careful that I don't go down into my chrome. I don't get carried away with my lines and go down into my chrome area here. But I want to definitely get down on that a little bit. Okay, well, that worked out pretty good. Now I've got a little area in here behind the steering wheel that I did not get with the brush. I'll come back in and get that here in just a little bit. Let's see, look at this. Okay. Right. That's not looking too bad. I don't think anyways. Now here's one of those areas where the background area here had to be really careful because the detail I wanted to get right there, that little tiny mark in the glass could have gotten covered up real easily by the brush in there. I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And I like the way this edge is coming out. I like the way this is working out in here with what I'm doing. It's kind of a neat look, I think. And I think it's going to look fairly realistic. Okay. And now I am at a point here where I've got the glass, but I've also got one of the windshield wipers in here. So I want to make sure that I am taking care of that. You can see that's just a very, very thin line right there. So I want to be extremely cautious around it to make sure I don't go in there and wipe it out. And then this over here on the other side of it is where the background area is at. So we'll come in here and again, just try to be very, very careful. Work my way down to the line where the windshield wiper is at, and then try and come back up in here and fill this in. And there we go. All right, now I can get back in here and work on this glass. I've talked about it before. Working on drawings like this can really be therapeutic. You can really kind of get out of your state of mind if you're having a rough day or something like that. This is a really great way to kind of step away from that. Okay, and let's go up here. All right, there we are. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to come up into this glass up in here. And this is going to be a little bit fun because this is not as dark. The reflections up here are causing it to be a little bit lighter than some of this down in here. So I want to try and make sure I stay light up here as much as possible, but I want to make sure that I'm not leaving it too light because I still need that contrast between the edges of the glass and the actual glass itself. And then, of course, as I get over here, I've got some other areas that have background in it that I need to leave open and figure out exactly how I'm going to handle those areas. And that's what a lot of it is. Actually, I think I'll start over here first and get this in. So this is still fairly black over here on the glass. There we go. Hang on for a second. Let me adjust my microphone. Okay, I'm sorry. My microphone had a mind of its own for a second there. So if you're watching the live stream, I would definitely love to get some feedback from you. And if you're watching this after I've done it live, if you're just tuning into the video, I'd like to get your thoughts on it. If you want to leave me comments, I would certainly appreciate hearing what your thoughts are about the drawing, about my artwork, about what I'm doing with my streams. So please feel more than welcome to share your thoughts and comments. If you have suggestions about what I can do to improve on the stream, if you have suggestions about subjects that you'd like to see me attempt to draw, I'm open to anything. I'm hoping to learn how to draw new things as well as draw things that I'm very familiar with. There are some things I enjoy drawing, and I hope to be able to share some of that in future live streams. But I also want to be open to working on things that I've never worked on before, things that are of interest to the viewers. Okay, so we're going to start back over here again, and I'm going to work on this little piece of glass over here. Glass is a challenging thing to draw in pretty much, or paint in pretty much any medium that you work in. Glass is it's a solid material, but because of the translucence or the transparency of it, reflections of light, the impact of the color of light on it, the color of the glass. There's a lot of interesting and challenging aspects to drawing and painting glass. This little paint I'm working on here, for example, it has some variations in the reflections. So there are some areas here that are very, very dark. There are some lighter areas in here. And I'm going to try and capture some semblance of that to try and describe that with my pen strokes. And hopefully I'll be successful and it will come out looking realistic. So now this next piece that we're getting into over here, this piece starts to have some variation in it. This is darker over here, getting lighter as it comes over to this part here. So this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm probably going to handle this a little bit differently than what I do or what I have handled other pieces of the glass. So I've got a kind of a basic tone in there. Now I want to work from this end coming back, progressively making this darker over here and trying to avoid coming into this part here as much. And you can start here, you can start here. I'm going to start here just because it works for my hand position. So you can see this now takes on a darker tone than this. And this is just cross-hatching. I'm just putting lines in different directions and laying them across one another. And then the effect of that is that you get more layers of ink and you create the effect of a gradation going from a lighter tone here all the way back here where I'm going to make this almost come to a pitch black. Okay, and then I can come in here. There's a little bit of a tone variation on the bottom edge of this. put that in there. And these variations, these gradations, are the things that help a drawing to look realistic. If you just have lines like what I've got here, I mean, it's clear that this is a car. At least I hope it's clear that it's a car, but it lacks depth. It lacks that description of the shadows and the highlights and the gradations between them that tell you what the shape of it is, that tell you that this has got volume and mass. And that's difficult enough sometimes to do with pencil, where you can put on very light shades and you can take it and use blending stumps to blend it down and put on more graphite and slowly build up to your darkest shadows and to shape it. If you're using pen and ink, you have to be a lot more patient with that, and you have to really focus on what you're dealing with here. Okay, so in this next piece of glass, I've got a similar thing going on, except in this case, the gradation it's actually lighter up here towards the top than it is towards the bottom. So I've got to do a similar thing to what I did over here, but I've got to focus on keeping those gradations where they belong. I'm trying to keep my lines evenly spaced. The closer your lines get together, the darker that things will look. And sometimes you don't want uniformity. It just depends on the subject that you're drawing and the effects that you're trying to achieve as to what you do. Now down here, like I said, this down here actually is darker in the reference photo than what it is up top. So I'm going to do more cross hatching down here to create that effect there. This over here is a lot darker than what's around it. And all of these gradations are being caused by the broken glass reflecting light at slightly different angles. And I'm trying to capture basically the essence of that in my drawing, which is a challenge. Okay, that was not too bad. That worked out pretty good. Okay, I think since I'm up here, I'm going to go ahead and try and work on this mirror that's hanging down here. Now the mirror has got an oval shape to it, and there is a shadow that goes on the underside of this mirror that really defines the shape of it. And I just want to be careful as I'm coming in, putting in the bottom edge of this. Okay, so that gives me the general shape of that. Now, this mirror has got some, it's kind of highlighted on this side, and it's more of a gray over here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break out one of the lighter colored ink pens here. We'll grab the finest point that I've got with these. And of course I should have pulled these out of the bag before I started this, but the excitement of a live stream, right? Okay, so I've got the 0.5, which, oh, that's the wrong one. Here we go. Sorry for crossing over the camera there, folks. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to kind of test a little bit over here to see what I got. Now I'm going to do what's called stippling. I've been doing cross hatching, and stippling is where instead of drawing lines, I'm going to take the pen and I'm going to just touch the tip of it. And I don't know how much that's registering on the camera right there. It may not be registering all that well because it's a very small area. But by putting small dots of ink down and then building them up, I can create very subtle shadows on an area. So I'm going to come in here on this mirror. I'm going to start stippling this. And I want to leave the highlight over here alone. And so that gives me kind of a gray tone that I've now built up on top of this shadow area that I created. That helps me define the shape of that mirror a little bit. And that's what it's all about. It's all about trying to define these areas so that everything looks real. And that's ultimately what I'm hoping to do, is to achieve more or less a realistic look. Okay. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put a little bit of the steering wheel in. Okay. And I'm going to use this lighter ink for this. Okay. There we go. Now I'll come in with one of my larger Copic pens here. 0.5 should do. And I'm going to fill in this area underneath the steering wheel. Just trying to be very careful not to go into my glass. And I want to go up into the bottom of this steering wheel because the steering wheel is actually disappearing into the shadows down here. So I want to break up that steering wheel with this shadow that I'm putting in here. And just like with the mirror, by doing that, I'm helping to describe that form. I'm letting you know that that steering wheel is wrapping around from the top. It's wrapping around from light to shadow. There we go. And let's see if I've got another Copic I can use here. We'll try this one. I just want to get closer to the edge of this glass down here, and I don't want to go in there with too large of a marker tip because that's a surefire way of going in and drawing over these white edges that I've tried to maintain. So, all right. Okay, well, I think that's where we're at for tonight. I will continue to do some work on the drawing over the course of the next week. And next week when we come in for the next live stream, I will start getting into, I guarantee I will get into the grill work and the headlights. I think those are areas that will really start to make this drawing come to life. And then we'll just keep moving on from there. And I'm going to do these live streams every week with this drawing until I finish it. Hey, let me know in the comments down below if you would like me to do a longer live stream as I'm working on these drawings. Let me know that. I'm more than willing to entertain that. If you think I'm going too long, let me know that, and I'll shorten it up perhaps. And again, like I said, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. I invite you to hit the notification bell and share your comments down below. And until next week, keep drawing, and I hope to see you soon. Take care, everybody.